If you've been around as much as I am, you've probably seen the movie Snakes on a Plane. Well, I never watched it. I watched the highlights of that movie simply because I cannot stand the sight of snakes. But guess what? I'm sure you've already seen this in the news by now. There is a fellow pilot who had to contend with a snake inside his plane while cruising at 11,000 feet. Interesting story, bizarre story, very intriguing story, I must say. So the story began like this. When the pilot approached the parked aircraft, the ground crew informed him that they had earlier seen a snake, just lying there minding its own business under the shadow of the wing of the aircraft. Well, they looked around it, did their pre-flight, opened the engine cowlings because that's the first place they thought the snake could slither into and hide. But obviously, if a snake slithers into the engine, the problem is once the engine gets hot, it must move away from that space. It can only move inwards towards the cockpit. So they couldn't find the snake, during pre-flight, and they tried to open every other space they could get. Carefully so, I believe. They couldn't find the snake. They took off. Made a refueling stop somewhere in Bloemfontein. And then when they were taking off onwards again towards Nelspruit, suddenly the fella felt something cold on his hip, on his left side. And he assumed, it's probably one of my water bottles. Usually carries water bottles that he puts between himself and the sidewall of the aircraft. So he thought maybe it's my bottle and my bottle is not maybe my bottle is not tightly closed. The lid is not tightly closed. So maybe it's dripping. That's why I'm feeling cold. But instant Moss, he decides to look down. And when he looks down, he sees the head of the snake receding back under his seat. Honestly, this guy has to be one composed pilot. I know a number of us would have panicked and screamed and kicked instead of flying the aircraft at that stage. I mean, we are human, so the reaction that one would get to such a thing, it can never really be tested until one is placed in that particular situation. So he saw the snake recede back under under the seat of his aircraft, and he kept calm. He continued flying. And for a moment, he thought, should I tell my passengers in the back or should I keep quiet? But what if my passengers discover the snake for themselves? What if it slithers out of, the position just taken under my seat into the back seat and people become chaotic and I lose control of the aircraft? So he calmly explained to them that indeed we have a snake in the aircraft. Remain calm. It's under my seat. I'm going to try and get us down to the ground and safely exit this aircraft. Then he declared an emergency with Johannesburg Control, who then redirected him to the nearest, safest landing area, which was an airport nearby. I think it's Velcom, if I'm not mistaken. So he landed there. They checked every other area after landing. They brought in some engineers to strip the aircraft, the panels that they suspected the snake could be hiding under. Still, they could not find the snake. Well, after 2 days of a frantic search with an expert snake catcher, they couldn't find the snake. But the journey onwards to Nelspruit still awaited this gentleman. So he did what any other pilot could do under the situation. Plugged every hole that he thought could allow the snake to gain access back to the cockpit. After plugging every other opening that is there, he took off and safely landed in Nelspruit. As to the whereabouts of the snake, to this day, we still don't know. But kudos to that fella for maintaining his calm, for maintaining his composure at 11,000 feet in the face of a deadly Cape Cobra snake. And as we say in the aviation sector, ANC, aviate, navigate, communicate. He did exactly that. He continued aviating, he continued navigating, and then he communicated the predicament to his passengers and to Johannesburg Control. And he safely landed the aircraft, saved all lives on board, including the life of the snake. Angela Dube, cheers.